got in the room here? Show hands. You know, you gotta be willing to listen to anything. And that's some of my favorite producers, RZA, you know what I mean? Some of the cats that, they're not afraid to listen to any sound, to get sounds from anywhere in the world in order to make those beats that they want. And so that's really what makes an outstanding musician and what makes an outstanding artist. And so as we go along, you're gonna find out that a lot of some of our favorite jazz musicians were not afraid to listen to music from all over the world. So then we move to what was going on in terms of racially and culturally in New Orleans, in the South, is that again, that lament that I told you, you need to understand that this is a hard life. So that music was an indication, and a lot of the music and the sentiment of that music came out to kind of be expressive in that way. Downtown, these musicians would play these gigs, they would call them the straight gigs. So until, you know, from 8 to midnight or 8 to 2 a.m., they would get that money at the places where most of us in this room wouldn't even be allowed in the front door. And they would be playing, you know, they would call it square music or straight jazz or whatever, or swing, you know, or that big band stuff, which had its own, you know, it had its own thing, you know. But those cats, man, they were all creative. Some of them were trained in Juilliard. I mean, Miles Davis was wealthy, he was raised wealthy. He was musically trained, classically trained. So some of these cats weren't just cats off the street who just taught themselves how to play. Some of these guys were really raised well, were trained to be music aficionados, right? So what happens is that they would play these gigs downtown, call them their straight gigs. Then after they got work, they still had that creative impulse in them, that they still wanted to create, but they felt in some way, shape, or form restricted by the music that they were making. So they would go uptown. Everybody know where uptown is? When I say they would go uptown, we're talking about New York. We're talking about Manhattan in the 40s. All right, we're talking about Harlem. Who's from Harlem? Dipset, right? Y'all don't get it? Does anybody like any? ASAP Mob from Harlem? We're talking about Harlem, okay?
What about Big L? Is he from Harlem?
Big L's definitely from Harlem.
That's like a big one.
Yo! Big L, wow! Big L, that's heavy. So check it out. So they would go from downtown and them straight gigs, and they would go uptown, and they would all meet up at a place called Minton's Playhouse. And they would have these things, they would call them cutting sessions, meaning it was battling, but they called them cutting sessions. So if you couldn't cut it, you know, if I got a trumpet, you got a trumpet, we going back and forth. What does that sound like in your culture? Right? Those ciphers. It's a freestyle cipher. Y'all call them freestyle ciphers. They call them cutting sessions. I swear to you, it's the same thing. They just, you know, it was just in the 40s. It's the same exact thing. The back band would play whatever, and they would go up, and you had a chance to and then the guy would come back. He would take whatever phrases you made sonically and invert them and then clown you and then bring it back and then play it higher and lower. They would do the same thing musically that sometimes you do when you take somebody's word or verse or whatever and you flip it and you bounce it. They would do the same thing with a horn. And really what they're doing is they're making fun of you. He was like, you're playing that thing? He's like, you're playing, you know, whatever famous song you're playing. I can play it better than you. I can also play it backwards. See what I'm saying? And then all the musicians in the room knew what he did. If maybe a regular fan, you wouldn't know, but like the musicians in the room know, wow, he took your phrase and brought it back to you, but he played it inside out, upside down. Y'all feel me? They couldn't do that in a normal situation because they weren't free to play the music that they wanted to play. And that was me trying to make the connections from bebop to hip hop and the social evolution of the music is that in the 60s and 70s, you know, that culture, the way you dressed, the way your style and all that stuff, you had to be creative. Creativity was the commodity. You guys, anything, my email is donald@fetmusic.com, and it was really an honor to be here.